The ballroom glittered with golden light, chandeliers scattering brilliance across polished floors, where laughter and the soft murmur of conversations blended into an elegant hum. Daniel Carver, CEO of Carver Enterprises, stood tall in his tailored tuxedo, his usual air of unshakable confidence hiding the truth he carried like a hidden scar. He was a single father, and tonight, he wasn't here just as the powerful man who commanded boardrooms, but as a dad trying to hold together the world of a little girl who deserved more smiles than shadows. At his side, his daughter Lily, barely 4 years old, twirled in her soft pink dress with bows in her hair, the very heart of his life. Yet as important as she was, Daniel had a problem that wasn't so easily solved by his wealth or influence. He needed a companion tonight, not for romance, but for appearances. In his world, the whisper of loneliness was a weakness, and tonight's party was crowded with partners, investors, and rivals who all had their eyes on him. So he had done something he'd never imagined himself capable of. He'd hired a woman, not a date in the usual sense, but an escort of sorts, a girlfriend for the evening, someone polished and beautiful to stand at his side, someone who could silence questions about his solitary life and soften the harsh edges of his reputation. When she arrived, Daniel expected someone superficial, a mask of practiced charm, but what he found was different. Her name was Evelyn, and instead of rehearsed smiles, she carried warmth. Instead of a presence heavy with calculation, she brought lightness, the kind of grace that made a room quieter without her trying. Daniel had introduced her politely, keeping boundaries clear, but Lily had noticed her instantly. The little girl's wide eyes had lit up, and within moments she was tugging Evelyn's hand, whispering secrets, giggling, and looking at her with the kind of trust only a child could give so quickly. Throughout the evening, Daniel caught himself watching them, his daughter and this woman who was supposed to be temporary. Evelyn crouched down to Lily's level, listening as though every word the child spoke was a treasure. She smoothed Lily's dress when she tripped, brushed a stray curl back behind her ear, and laughed with her as though they'd known each other forever. It unsettled him in a way he couldn't explain. He wasn't supposed to feel this. He wasn't supposed to imagine what it would be like if she were always here. Hours passed, glasses clinked, conversations drifted, and the party became the kind of blur Daniel was used to surviving. Yet Evelyn had done more than play her role. She had made it real. She held his arm gently, not as an accessory but with presence. She spoke with intelligence that impressed even his most skeptical colleagues. She smiled at him, sometimes in ways that caught him off guard, as though she could see through the iron shell he wore and didn't flinch at the man beneath. And then came the moment he would never forget. The music softened, and he found Lily sitting cross-legged on the floor near Evelyn, talking about her favorite bedtime story. Evelyn listened, her chin resting on her hand, eyes tender. And then Lily turned, looked up at him with all the innocence in the world, and said words that hit harder than any business deal, sharper than any rival's move. "Daddy," she said, pointing at Evelyn, "can she stay forever?" The room seemed to fall away. Conversations continued around him, glasses raised, but in Daniel's chest something shifted, something he had buried beneath years of discipline and duty. His throat tightened, his carefully built composure cracking under the weight of a child's wish. He met Evelyn's eyes, and for a moment neither of them could speak. She wasn't supposed to be permanent. She wasn't supposed to matter beyond tonight, and yet, here she was, holding his daughter's heart in her hands, and something in his own. Evelyn's expression softened, a little startled, a little vulnerable. She reached out, brushing Lily's cheek, and whispered, "I'll stay as long as you want me to, sweetheart." Daniel looked at her then, really looked at her, not as an arrangement, not as a mask to shield him from gossip, but as a woman who had stepped into his world and in the span of a single evening made it warmer. He realized with startling clarity that he didn't want this night to end. For years, Daniel Carver had believed strength was in standing alone, but as his daughter's small arms wrapped around Evelyn and Evelyn smiled at him over the top of her head, he understood something deeper. Strength wasn't isolation, It was letting someone in. It was risking the unknown for the chance of something real. The party moved on around them, but for Daniel, time stood still. His daughter's innocent request had opened a door he hadn't dared approach. And though he didn't know what tomorrow would bring, he knew one thing with certainty. He wanted to try. He wanted to see if forever could begin tonight. When Daniel Carver first stepped into the grand ballroom that night, he did so with the kind of confidence that came from years of standing at the top of the business world. The kind of confidence that was practiced, polished, and unshakable in eyes of others, but inside he was just a man who had learned to wear armor so long it felt like skin. A man who had carried both the weight of an empire and the delicate heart of a little girl who called him daddy. And though wealth and power were supposed to make life easier, nothing could fill the quiet ache he felt when he saw Lily's smile fade as she noticed other children with mothers at school recitals or playgrounds. Moments where he wished he could give her more than his presence. Wished he could give her the softness she deserved alongside the strength he fought to provide. That was why, in a decision he almost resented himself for, he had hired Evelyn, a woman who was supposed to be a temporary solution, a graceful figure to stand at his side for the evening, to distract curious eyes at the gala from whispering about why the CEO always came alone, to keep his daughter entertained so he could manage conversations with investors who measured his every move like predators circling prey. But the moment Evelyn walked in, with her calm smile and eyes that carried warmth instead of calculation, Daniel's plan began to unravel in the most unexpected way, for Lily was usually shy with strangers, ran to her almost immediately, her tiny hands tugging at Evelyn's dress, her laughter ringing as though she had found something she had been waiting for without knowing it. And Daniel, who had intended to keep this woman at a safe distance, found himself drawn to the sight of his daughter giggling as Evelyn crouched to her level, whispering secrets, smoothing the pink fabric of her little gown, and listening with the kind of attention only someone who cared would give. It wasn't scripted, it wasn't rehearsed, it was real, and that reality unsettled him more than any hostile takeover or boardroom ambush ever could, because it reminded him of what he had lost and what he still yearned for. As the evening unfolded, Evelyn didn't just play the role of a hired companion. She became the kind of presence that changed the atmosphere around her, speaking with his colleagues with intelligence that impressed them, holding his arm not as an accessory but with a steadiness that made him feel less alone, smiling at him sometimes with a quiet understanding that pierced the walls he had built around himself. And though he tried to stay composed, every stolen glance, every sound of Lily's laughter at her side, made the possibility of something more slip through the cracks of his guarded heart. Then came the moment, small and fragile yet powerful enough to alter everything, when Lily, sitting cross-legged on the polished marble floor, told Evelyn about her favorite bedtime story, her voice full of wonder as Evelyn listened as if the tale was the most important in the world. And then, without hesitation, Lily turned her wide eyes to her father, her voice innocent and unburdened as she said, "Daddy, can she stay forever?" And those words, simple and unfiltered, struck Daniel harder than any accusation or loss he had endured, because in them was the pure truth of a child's need, a truth he could not ignore. And for a moment the room blurred around him, the music fading, the laughter of others dimming, until there was nothing but the sight of Evelyn, startled yet tender, and Lily's small arms wrapped around her as though she already belonged to them. And in that moment, Daniel realized that the strength he had prided himself on was not in enduring solitude, but in finding the courage to let someone in, to risk vulnerability of hope, to believe that perhaps he and his daughter could have more than fleeting arrangements, that maybe forever could be more than just a child's wish whispered in a glittering hall. And though he didn't know where this path might lead, as Evelyn looked back at him with eyes that seemed to ask the same question he felt pounding in his heart, he made a silent promise to himself and to his daughter that he would not let this chance slip away, that he would at least try to see if forever could begin with the woman who was supposed to be temporary, but who, in a single night, had already become unforgettable.